Good afternoon, web design. Today we're going to start looking at images. And right now we're in Unit 4, and images are pictures, and pictures can say thousands of words, and great images can help make the difference between an average looking site and a really engaging one. So it's important to remember what pictures we are going to use for our website and how important they are in terms of how they relate to our subject matter. So your images should be relevant, should convey information, convey the right mood, be instantly recognizable, and fit the color palette. Though we haven't really talked about color at this point, we will in the future, and so it's important to remember how your pictures correspond with not only the information in your website, but also the color and design. When we do use pictures or images in our website, it's important to think about where we're getting our images. Because our websites aren't available to the public, they're not on a server, they're just local, and we're only the ones that will be seeing them. It's, at least for this purpose or this class, it's okay if we use them from Google. However, if we were publishing this and using this for a professional website, it's important that we take into consideration plagiarism and what is available in terms of free stock photos. So here's some websites that have photos that we are allowed to use that are royalty free, that we're not violating any sharing laws, image sharing laws, and we don't have to worry about using somebody else's work if in fact we were publishing them online. But because we are only seeing them for our class, it's okay, at least at this point, for our practice purposes, to use things that we find on Google. So when we're going to be storing our photos, we are going to be building a website. So we might have multiple pictures. We might even have multiple HTMLs. So it's important for us to start keeping our information organized. And that means we're going to have to use a lot more folders and keeping track of where those folders are. So when we're building a site, it's good practice to create a folder for all your images the site uses. The folder should be called images, and it is important to know what the exact name of each image is called. So in just a second, we're going to find some photos, or you're going to find some photos, and we're going to make sure we're naming them correctly. And then we understand what the names are. We're going to understand if it's a JPEG, which is a type of photo or image, if it's a GIF, which is also a type of image, or a PNG, which usually has a transparent background. And we'll need to know what images are available to us as well. So from now on, we should create a separate folder for every assignment. Within this folder, you will have your HTML file and your images folder. And we're going to do that right now. So in your web design folder, and mine's blank, but yours might have a whole bunch of information here. So in your web design folder that we've been using for this class, we are now going to create a new folder. And this folder is going to be specifically for this assignment called images, practice images. So I'm going to go here. I can just do it right in my web design folder here. The one that you currently have is fine. You're going to create a folder. So we are going to go to File, New Folder, and you are going to create a folder. And I'm going to call this Image, you might call it Image Practice. Make sure it's all one word, no spaces. And in this image practice, we're going to have our HTML file, and we're going to have our images folder. Now, if you're on a Chromebook, you're going to want to go to your files folder in your downloads and create folders that way. So it's going to be slightly different in terms of what you're seeing here, but you're going to go to that files icon that's on your toolbar, and I believe you can right click and create a folder, and you're going to name it Image Practice. So same kind of concept. So in this image practice, we're also going to, if I just double click, I'm now going to create another folder called Images. And my images are going to be in there. So you'll see that there's a path. So my folder, my web design folder is in my desktop. Yours will be, yours could be in your downloads. And then inside of that main web design folder, you're going to create a new folder called Image Practice. And in that Image Practice, you're going to have images. And that's where we're going to put our images. So if you're not sure, I created a picture here in Schoology for you to see. You're going to have your original web design folder. Within that folder, you're going to have a new folder called, in this case, it was Image Assignment, but you could say Image Practice. And then you're going to also have an images folder inside of there. So that's kind of called the path. And if you're not sure what the path is, you can see it down here. Otherwise, you can follow it based on the highlighted version. So it's important to know what folder you're in. And you can see it, if you're on the Mac, you can see it's right up here as well. All right, so let's look for some photos. I'm going to go to here and let's just do puppies or kittens or something. And I did a search for puppies. Okay, so here's a puppies folder picture. I'm going to right click or hit Control in my mouse and right click, and it's going to give me these options, this pop-up window. And I'm going to go to Save Image As. So make sure you're saving the image as. And then you want to make sure you're in the right folder. So my folder is WD Bauman, and then I'm going to my Image Practice, and then I'm going to put it inside my Images folder, which is inside my Image Practice, which is inside my whole web design folder. So I'm going to double click on images, and then I want to make sure that's exactly where I'm at. And then I'm going to name my image. Now, it probably might say download. It might have a default name, a really long name. You're going to want to be specific so you know which picture is which. So I might just say puppy 1. And it's a JPEG. And I'm going to say save. And then I'm just going to double check. Is that where it's at? And there it is, puppy 1. All one word, no spaces. So be careful when you're naming your files, your folders, and your images that you name it correctly. Don't use any spaces or fancy characters. Just be very straightforward. So let's go ahead and do another one. And I would say keep it simple. Descriptive, but simple. All right, so I'm going to right click, save image as. Make sure I'm in my proper folder. So if you want to see the hierarchy here, make sure it's exactly where I need to be. The hierarchy here is images, Bauman, image practice images, and I'm going to call this puppy 2. Or you could say chocolate lab or something that you're going to know. And it's easy to spell and type up because you're going to need to retype this. All right, puppy 2. Okay, so now we have our 2 images. It's in our image practice folder. It's all good. It's also in our images folder, which is our inner image practice. So you see here is the path. So I'm in my, again, I'm in my big web design folder. I've created a new folder called image practice. And then my pictures are in my images folder, which is in my image practice folder. All right. So I'm also going to now create a web page, an HTML site or an HTML file. So I'm going to go to my text editor. Okay. So if you're in text edit, you're going to click, I'm going to go file new. You're going to make sure again that it's in plain text if you're on a Mac. So I'm going to go to format, make sure it's in plain text so there's nothing here. So if it looks like this, go back to format, make plain text. And then I'm going to save this. I'm going to go to File, Save. If you're on a Chromebook, you're going to do the same thing. And you want to make sure you're in the right folder. Okay, so I'm in, oops, I'm going to go to my desktop here. I'm going to be in my WD Bauman folder. I'm going to be in the image practice folder. I'm not going to be in the images folder. So I'm just in my practice folder for images. And I'm going to call this Bauman image, all one word please, .html. Make sure you have that .html, save. Nope. Sorry, I had to double check. All right. So now you'll see that my Bauman page is here, and it's in the same level as my images folder. Okay, and both of these, both the folder and the file, are in my image practice folder, which is in my web design folder. Very confusing, I know. Okay, so let's go to our thing, and we're gonna start typing. So I'm gonna do, as normal, doc type. I'm gonna make this bigger. Okay. HTML5, very important. I'm gonna be starting to look at your files and making sure you're using proper HTML5 code. So doc type, HTML. We have our head, meta, charset, UTF-8, title, practice image, and our body, body, HTML. Okay, so in this, we're now going to practice putting our image on our web page. So first things first, I probably need a header just to show what this page is going to be about. So H1, and practice using images. H1. Okay. I'm going to save, and I'm going to run this to make sure everything's working the way it needs to. So to do that, you can go to your files folder. If you're on a Chromebook, you're going to click on the little file pop-up window. You're going to find your file, and you're just going to drag it in. If you're on a Mac, same thing. Drag. Oops, and it's not going to show it. Probably because I did not save this very well. Save as. Sorry, see, it saved it as a TXT, so I want to hit cancel. You guys want to make sure. Let me get rid of these. I'm going to delete this and do a new one here. Okay, make this bigger so you guys can see. File save. Sometimes using text edit doesn't always do it very well. Okay, you want to make sure it's Unicode UTF-8. I'm in my image practice, and I'm calling it Bauman image.html. And it's saved. All right, let's try this again. Perfect. Okay, so here is my browser, and it's working all good. All right. Okay, so now let's input an image. Or input, let's code an image. So to do that, we're going to use something that's new to us, and it's the IMG tag. So IMG for image. We have to use an attribute called source. So just like when we did a link, we had to use the attribute href. For images, we have to use the attribute called source. So src for source equals quotation mark. So the source for our image is going to be in the images folder. So we have to put the images folder in here. Images / And then let's find the name of our image that we want to use. I'm going to use puppy1. So puppy.jpg. Make sure you know if it's a JPEG with an EG. Sometimes it's a JPG. So make sure you have the exact extension that it named it as. Closing quotation mark. And close that up. Now you don't need a closing \img. This is just the opening tag img with the source. You don't need to close out the tag. It's one of the few that doesn't have an opening and a closing. It just has one. All right, so let's save this and refresh, and hopefully we get a puppy. Nope. Oh, so you'll notice, this is a good example. So here I said, hey, website, find the source puppy JPEG in the images folder. But you'll notice that puppy JPEG doesn't exist. There's a puppy1 and a puppy2. So because puppy doesn't exist, my website gives me a broken image icon, which means there's no image. So let's go ahead and put puppy1. Make sure. That's why it's important to know how you're naming your images. Save and refresh. And there's a puppy. Perfect. So that's your first picture. And pictures are inline objects. So if I wanted another picture, let's go ahead and put our second picture in. IMG SRC equals quotation mark. It's in my images folder, so I have to go into my images folder and then find the next one. And you notice I spelled puppy wrong for my image. So I need to spell it the same way I spelled it. See here? I spelled puppy wrong. So however I spelled it here, I need to spell it the same way in my code. So PUPY 2.jpg, JPEG, quotation mark. Here. Save, refresh. Now here's my other image. So you notice that these are inline elements, meaning that they're in order. It doesn't drop down a space. If I wanted to break them up, I would use the BR tag. So BR to break the line. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, so again, let's recap. We are now using the IMG tag. Has only an opening tag. You don't need a closing tag for it. So it's IMG. Then you are going to use the attribute SRC, which means source. And you're saying, where's this image source? You're giving it a path or instructions of where to find it. It is in your images folder. And then it's going to go find puppy1.jpg or whatever you name your images. So it's important to know where your images are and what you've named them. Okay. So make sure that your HTML is in the same folder as your image folder, or that they're at the same level. So you notice that Bauman image and the image folder are all in my image practice folder. So make sure that they're on the same level, if you will. So Bauman image HTML is not inside the images folder. They're on the same level. So be careful about that. Okay, next. We are going to use some other attributes that will help us with creating better images, I think. Our images can be, we can use some different things for identifying them, titling them, all these different things that we need to do. So we need to have an alt, and an alt gives us a text description of the image. So after the image, I might have an alt, A-L-T. Move this over. Equals quotation marks. And It can be a description of the image, which describes anything that you would want. So I might say puppy. And the reason why we have an alt is because if for some reason, let's say, as I did before, the image, it can't find the image, maybe I spelled something wrong, the alt name should show up. So let's just show you. So let's say I spelled puppy.jpg, or I didn't have the right source for that picture. So I'm going to save and refresh. And you'll now notice that if it can't find the image, so my web browser is looking for images puppy.jpg, but puppy.jpg does not exist in my images folder, it will then show the alternative name for that picture. And the reason why we do this is because maybe we are like, we know there needs to be a picture there, and it's just nice to have a descriptor of what that picture might be. So it's good practice to at least have an alt pic in there, and you can name it anything you want, but it should kind of describe what the picture is. So we're going to do the same thing, or let's fix this. So it's puppy1, save and refresh. And I'm going to do the same thing here. So I have alt equals, and maybe I do chocolate. Yeah. That's my alternative. Okay. So there's using alt as an alternative name. Now let's use title. Title is another attribute for IMG. So you're going to go after that, hit space, title, and create a title for your picture. You might say lab puppy sitting. Save and refresh. And now you'll see when I put my cursor over the image, it now gives the title of what that picture is, lab puppy sitting. So you'll also want to do that for this. So title, give the picture title. You might say cute lab. Save and refresh. And now when I put my mouse over it, I get titles for the pictures. So that's another descriptor or adding context or adding information about your pictures, which is what we want to do. Next, let's talk about the image size. So as you can see, my images are not the same size. We can do some image resizing in CSS, and that's something that we're going to do later on. However, let's talk about doing stuff in HTML, what we can do directly in our IMG tag. So after I have the title, the alt, the source of the image, I'm going to make this bigger here, I can do height. Height equals quotation mark. And maybe we do pixels. So now think of your page as 1080 pixels across and usually about 600 pixels down. That's usually the big general browser size. So it's 1080 across, 600 up and down. So the height, we want it to be relatively like sometimes 200 maybe. So 200 px. Actually, we don't need px. We can just do 200 and it knows it's pixels. Space, and then maybe width. Maybe we want it to be pretty square, 200. Okay, save, and it should resize this picture to be 200 by 200. So it's kind of smushed. Depending on how the picture was saved in Google, you might get it blurry, so it might be pixelated. So you might have to work with that. Not all things are going to be the same width and height. Maybe I want it to be 200 across and maybe, or maybe 300. Let's do 300 across, maybe 250, a little bit bigger, maybe 350 wide. Save and refresh. Okay. And now let's get the other one to be the exact same size. So space height equals quotation marks 300 and width equals 350. And now they're the same size. Perfect. So that's a little bit about using images. So your assignment for the rest of the hour is you are going to find 2 more pictures for this practice. So use this page or use this site that we just started. You're going to find 2 more pictures and you are going to put them on this page. So let's go ahead and make another header here. My 2 pictures. And you are going to create, so below are 2 more pictures that I found and put on my site. So you can pick any 2 pictures that you want. However, your 2 pictures that you find, they need to have an IMG. They need to have the correct SRC. They need to have the correct alt, so create an alternative name. They need to have a title, and they have to have some height and width. I'd like them to be the same height and width, but they don't have to necessarily be similar pictures, at least for this practice. Okay, I just want to make sure you know how to find 2 more pictures, put them in your images folder, and then code them correctly in HTML. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. If you do email me, I need a picture of your code, and it will help if you take a picture of the path. So that way I can see what folders everything is in, as well as your pictures and what they're called. Okay? So like I said, folks, be aware that every attribute, so this SRC attribute, there's a space between every one. So see how there's a space between this quotation mark and the next attribute, and then a space for title, and a space for height and width. They not need to be within the image opening tag. There's no closing tag, so please make sure you're aware of that. Also, please make sure you understand where your images are located, how they're spelled. As you can see, I wasn't paying close attention, so I need to make sure I know how I spelled them in the images folder. And when you're done, you are going to now do one more step. You're going to click on your images, your image practice. Okay. You're going to right click. Right click to get it to say compress image practice. So you're going to compress that folder. So you see how you have an image practice zip? You are going to hand in that zip file. So before, I made you guys create a zip file for your whole web design folder. For this assignment, you just need to make a zip file for your image practice folder. So again, let me delete this and show you one more time. You're going to click on the folder, so make sure that it's highlighted. You're going to right click, or if you're on a Mac, you can hit Control and then the mouse. Right click, and you're going to click on compress. That's going to create a zip file just for your image practice folder. And you're going to only hand in your image practice zip. That way I can get everything that's in your folder. I can have your HTML file and your image folder. So I need the zip file. Please be aware of that. And then hand it in at the end of the hour.